Hello,
Hi, John.
Jill. How you doing?
I'm great. I can't believe I'm actually talking to
What?
you.
I can't believe I'm talking to you.
Perfect.
Tell me what's on your mind,
Yeah, so just kind of a quick recap. I work as a math consultant K through 12 at an educational service center in Ohio.
Okay.
Actually, Mike Lipnos, that you
Oh
talked
yeah.
to a month or so ago, he was here with me for a few years before he went to work for a school district, local school district.
Got it.
And he was the elementary guy, and I was the middle and high school gal. And he left, and I took over all of it.
Awesome.
But so we have, I think it's like 17 or 18 districts. I'm probably in 10 of them. And I just feel like I'm doing a little here, like I just kind of like sprinkling fairy dust. I come and go, and I'm not sure that I'm impactful, not consistently in buildings working with teachers. And I just was curious to kind of pick your brain, see
Sure.
if you had any ideas for me.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say when you go into, these schools? Tell me what that looks like. Tell me about like what your goals are versus their goals,
Mhm.
both, or what your mandates are when you're going in to support these. Paint me a picture.
Yeah. I mean, so my goal is always just for the kids to be doing the math, the kids to be doing the thinking, to take the ownership, um, to have the freedom to think in their own way and use their own experience and their own ideas. I mean, that's really my main goal. Everyone agrees we need to teach standards. Um, I often use the standards for mathematical practice as my avenue for the discussion because they're right there in your standards. Everyone knows you need to use them. Get the kids doing the standards for mathematical practice. But the teachers I work with, I'd say they're very typically, not all of them, of course. A lot of them listen to you, but some of them are just focused on just got to get through the standards. I got to say all the important things so the kids can hear it and move on.
Hmm.
So that's probably the disconnect.
Got it. I got it. What what you know, what do you ultimately you want kids to be thinking,
Mhm,
so that makes sense.
mhm.
What do you think holds these teachers back from doing what
Mm,
they want to do? Like where's the real barrier here?
I think there's kind of two. I think one is that they haven't really seen it in action.
Okay.
Okay, so in our area, we have a lot of folks who they grew up here, they went to college around here, they get a job at their alma mater or a neighboring district. So they're kind of in this cycle where they're seeing the same thing over and over again. And then I think there's also just a fear of letting go. There's a fear that if the kids start doing some of the thinking, that they lose control of what the kids are doing in their classroom.
Right. Right. Now, how do these teachers see you? Like tell me, like having a third, like you're a third party kind of coming in, right? Like, is
Right.
that, is that how this is structured? Like this is, I, I,
Definitely.
we've worked with school districts that have that, that kind of model.
Mhm.
Not everyone has that model, like the in-house versus, third party. So tell me, like, how does the teachers perceive the work, the support that you're doing? I'm
Yeah.
just curious about that dynamic.
Right. So it's kind of all over the place. This is year 5 for me, and the districts that, just kind of by sheer dumb luck, we started out with a model that I think really works well, which is starting with just some kind of vision setting, relationship building, what is it that we want for young people? And just taking the time to slowly build to where they see me as a support person. I tell them my favorite is when we're shoulder to shoulder. I was in a building last week who I was there to just kind of pop around, see how things were going. And one of the teachers pulled me in and he said, "Hey, I don't really like what I'm doing today. Do you want to do an activity?" And okay, what are you guys working on? We're looking at velocity and projectile motion. Okay, so we pulled up a 3-act task, right? And so that's my favorite, like the shoulder to shoulder, help me out with this. I have something going on that I want help with. Let's co-teach, let's co-plan. So there is some of that with people that I've known for a long, long time. And
Mhm.
so there's some trust there. But then there are other places where they want me to sit in a chair in the back of the room and not disrupt what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, so it really is kind of all over the place.
Right. Right. And when you say, you're going in, you're doing vision setting, you're doing that with every teacher. Is there like a program you're following where you're saying this is step one, step two, step three, or how, like, unpack that for me?
Yeah, not so I've started this year just working a little bit with instruction partners. They've been doing a bit, I think it's all over the country, but especially in Ohio, they've been partnering with work around high quality instructional materials.
Mhm.
So with one of my districts, I've been following their protocol, which is like vision setting tied in with teacher actions and student actions, kind of getting people to identify those keys. But other than that one district, I mostly just am kind of like building my own materials, right? So I'll ask them to do a variation of like stronger and clearer each time. Have you seen that one, the mathematical language routine? Where, okay, I'll have them like write, your sort of like sample vision statement. Maybe it's just bullets you value, and then I'll have you talk to 3 other people to try to refine it. And then we'll put them all on the board and get really ruthless and try to put it into something. And it's always some variation of, kids are problem solvers, they have perseverance, they know how to work together, right? It's always something
Right.
like that.
For
But
sure.
then we kind of get stuck on the like, okay, so what's next? Right? We
Right.
want this for our kids, but like, what's the next step?
Got it. And
Yeah.
are you like saying, I don't know what like, are we saying like, I'm just not sure what the next step is to strengthen that part? Or is it, you know, tell me where the real issue is here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's partly that. Like I've been doing a lot of the districts that I work with are looking at new materials, right? Just
Yep.
the way that COVID cycles got screwed up, like not everyone, a lot of people are looking at new material. So I've kind of been using that as my avenue, right? Like, okay, let's try to pick something like open up illustrative math is one that several of them have chosen. It's like, let's kind of use that as our avenue toward looking for better thinking tasks, truly aligned materials. And then within these materials, how do we get kids doing the work? Where can we put them in groups of 3 and have them, on the vertical surfaces, like just kind of using that as the avenue. But in other districts, it's more like I'm one of my districts, I'm saying, okay, share the routines you're using in the classroom so we can learn from each other. And they're just writing things like, maybe next month I'm going to try a think, pair, share. Right.
Right.
So I guess that's it, right? That's the sticky spot. Like, I know what I want, but where do I even start?
Right. Right. Now, when you go into a school, are you typically meeting with one teacher in there, all teachers? Um, what does that
Yeah,
look?
really. It really depends on the school. Like sometimes I'll go in and sometimes they'll have 30 teachers,
Yeah.
30 K through 12 teachers. Sometimes it'll half a dozen. And
But
then
are
sometimes
you
I'm meeting with them in their planning period.
right? Are you doing like when you have 30, are you doing like a group session? Is that what you're doing? Or you're saying
Yeah.
and there's
Sometimes I'll have 30 for a whole day,
yeah,
right? Here's your
right.
30 teachers. Do what you want with them.
And then what? Is there like follow up? I'm just
Yeah, not
trying to
always.
like think like what we're seeing, when we're seeing right now from a lot of the conversations we're having with teachers, with administrators, is that there's there's a when we are experiencing like we're not seeing the results, we're not seeing the
Yeah.
change, we're not seeing the buy-in from
Yeah.
certain teachers, because you got teachers that are just rolling with it and you're probably happy with those, but it's the ones that
Right.
it's like our students, it's like I wish I could change that one, and
Yeah.
I'm not. And that's where I'm thinking the whole time about how do I get that one, and
Yeah.
eats at us. And what we're seeing is there's obviously there's a lot of factors, but but one, the one factor I think is making a huge difference right now is that alignment across the like the key stakeholders and their peers. So, you're going to hear like, I don't want, you're basically what you hear is probably what we hear or what teachers say is I don't have time for that, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
what they're really saying is I'm not sure that that's going to be worth it. And
Yeah.
and then really that's what they're saying. They just haven't decided yet that it is worth it to invest the time. And there's a few reasons we feel like they're not. They're saying that for real. And one is I'm not sure it's worth it because what you're telling me to do is not exactly in line with what my principal wants me to do.
Oh, yeah.
And if my principal doesn't have my back here, then why would I do that? Because if I'm going to teach this new way, this new technique, like you're probably sharing a lot of pedagogical strategies. So it's like you're asking me to teach a new pedagogical strategy to get my kids thinking, makes sense.
Right.
But I know from my experience as a teacher that it's not going to, like, if I do that, chances are I'm not going to cover everything by the end of the semester or the end of the year, right?
Yep.
And if I don't, do I know that my principal will support me in that?
Mm,
Because if they don't,
great
why
question.
would I do that? Because if I don't cover the curriculum at the end of the year, teacher's like, well, you didn't cover everything. And the parent called
Yeah.
and the kid went off and didn't get into the school or whatever, right? Like all of these things that teachers worry about are real. And if the principal isn't aligned with where the real focus needs to be, they won't do it. And
See
the
that.
teacher has to feel like I'm giving you permission to not cover everything right now because that's more important right now. Until that
Yeah.
alignment is there, teachers won't change.
Hmm.
That's what we're seeing right now from number one. So it's like, how do you create the alignment between the teachers and the admin, but then also their fellow teachers? Well, like I'm going to teach this way, but I'm teaching the grade 12, uh, in Ontario here, we call it the advanced functions, which is really pre-calculus. But I mean, like,
Mhm.
could be any grade, like any grade. I'm teaching sixth grade. 3 doors down the hall, they're teaching sixth grade.
Mhm.
But we're not doing it the same way. And if we're not doing it the same way, or it's not that we're not doing it the same way, it's that we don't also share the same vision of like what's important. If you might be doing it differently, but we both share the same importance of problem solving, of resiliency, of fluency, of, those things that we said are important. Is everybody aligned that way? So that first is that alignment has to be there if you're going to see real change. Otherwise, it'll be little, you're moving little puzzle pieces around,
Right. Yeah.
and it feels like you're making success in these pockets, but the research shows that pocket success isn't sustainable success. So
I've
in
heard
a
you say that on
school,
this show. Yeah.
yeah, in a school, we have to have that alignment. Like the principal just has to be supportive. In so that vision planning work you do with a teacher, it kind of has to be done with the administrator too,
Mm.
so that
Mm.
so that the teacher can see eye to eye, like they actually see them go, that makes a lot of sense.
That
We should
makes
do that.
sense. Yeah.
Do that.
Mm.
And then you have to have that conversation that what happens if I do this and I don't cover all the curriculum, because it's a reality. You can't teach
Right.
something new and go, yeah, well, that was a flop, because it's going to be, right? It's going to
Right.
feel like a flop the first time you try something new, and you're going to have to go, do I do that again? How do I go on the next step of that so that I can still, it just means time, because teachers will say, well, I could do it better. It's like, you have to take more time to teach in a new way than the old way. And
Yeah.
not because the new way just takes more time, it's because you're going to fail, and you're going to want to like try again, or you're going to want to like make adjustments, or you're going to learn that you can do it faster, right? It's eventually we can cover a lot more curriculum teaching kids how to think than you can by teaching them how to mimic. So that part is fine. It's about getting them to realize that it might take more time first, initially, year one, year two. It's year 3 and 4 that you're going to make strides. because when you teach a fractions lesson this year, you're not going to teach that again until next year. And that takes time for us to see those growth moves. So that alignment is really key. The other thing is, and we've probably said this on the show too, we just had a webinar last week for district leaders, and this was a big part of it. I can send you the link if you like. Um,
Yeah.
the other part is, a lot of the time we're asking teachers to change their pedagogical moves before we help them, feel comfortable with the mathematics themselves.
I could see that. Yep.
So we're saying, hey, I want you to follow Peter Littlewell's Building Thinking Classrooms and get kids up and try different strategies before you show them the one strategy. But if the teacher hasn't actually tried different strategies themselves, or understood that there are different strategies and different models to represent that thinking, and shown, like grappled with the mathematics that way, then they're like, wait a minute, but I only know math this way, and you're asking me to give flexibility to the kids, but I don't know what they're going to do, because
Right.
I haven't anticipated, or, like most of the time, if we want to see that pedagogical change, we actually have to spend time helping them really just play with the mathematics themselves. And so like, if you're going to be getting them to like teach a lesson on adding fractions, but you want them to do it, using different models and strategies, then we better make sure that they've added fractions, other than just, hey, you multiply here, you group them, and you're done, right? Or if you're dividing
Yeah.
fractions, you help them understand that, you don't just have to flip and multiply. So you can do it this way, but now we have to give you time to practice that way, so that you feel comfortable just doing math that way. And then, so sometimes the districts that we partner with, we spend a year just focusing on what math fundamentals do we help our teachers just grapple with before we have any sort of expectation that they do it in the classroom.
I could totally see that.
Because they won't try it if they don't feel comfortable themselves. A lot of them, you're going to have a handful that are just like, I'm fine with that, in front of the class, but there's a
Sure.
lot of type A personalities that are teachers that are like, I need to know what leads from A to B to C to D while I'm in front of kids. Otherwise, I might get eaten alive.
Yeah.
And I'm scared of that. So I better know my stuff. So it's easy to memorize the process, because they'll say, that's the way I learned it. You've
Yep.
got an army of teachers that learn math that one way, and we're asking to teach it a different way. So
Yep.
that's really the other thing. So those two together can make a difference. If you spend time trying to go, what is the math? How do I unpack the math for them? And then also, how can I align the people that are surrounding them, the
Yeah.
administrators, the teachers, their peers? How do I help them grapple with those things before they're comfortable to make moves in their classroom?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially now that I'm working with teachers of younger grades, right? Because they just don't have the same level of content knowledge to feel comfortable that they know where it's going. And yeah.
Same with high school teachers. Like, I was a high school teacher my whole career, and it was years. I taught very traditionally, very procedurally for 10 years
Mhm.
before I, grappled with the area model and how that can be used to, and really understood that, hey, they're teaching that in the lower grades. Base 10 blocks are the same as algebra tiles. Like, maybe I should start using algebra.
Yep.
Then I can use the area model. Like, there's a lot of connections high school teachers need to make too, for them
Yeah,
to,
that's true.
unpacking, because they just trust that, hey, the abstract way, the algebraic way is the be all end all, and we got to just go straight there, instead of understanding that there is a progression of learning between the CRA model to get there, that everyone has to go through when you learn something new, and we have to be able to be flexible to move between the concrete, the representational, and the abstract.
Mhm.
Like, just teaching abstract is one way of mathematical proficiency. We need the other
Mhm.
ways to feel confident that kids are mathematically proficient. So,
Yeah.
all right, where's your head at now?
Oh man, I feel validated because those are two things I've been focusing on a little more this year, especially the piece about just doing math together. You
Yeah.
know, like helping teachers to unpack strategies that are present in their standards, the way kids can access them, the way it progresses. You know, one of my big things this year has just been those vertical conversations, like how are we using number lines all the way up? How does it support graphing? What about tape diagrams? You know, just like different representations that teachers a lot of times aren't familiar with until they just pop up, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely something that I think has been an aha for me. And it's good to hear you say, like, even take a year to do it, right? Because I think I wanted to go 15 minutes. Okay, now everybody gets
Right.
dividing fraction by fraction. All right, let's move on.
Right. Yeah. Next time, like you have a group of 30 teachers, if they're all within, a few grade levels,
Mhm.
spending that whole, it could be the whole day or the whole hour on just, multiplying 2-digit by 2-digit numbers using the area model, and then showing that it's really, when we get to algebra, it's the same thing. And it's the
Yeah,
distributed property here is the same as distributed property there. Um,
yep. Rather
and
than
that
teaching them.
and then they're going to naturally say, and this is your huge win, right? When you do that, and their natural says, "Oh, that's cool. How do I do that in the classroom?"
Yeah,
They say it, you're like, "All right, well, I can show you that." Like too,
yeah,
too often we just go in and go, "This is what you should do. This is what it looks like in the classroom," and then you have to figure out how to support them in the classroom instead of just getting them to go, "I want to do that in the classroom now that I'm a believer."
yeah. So if you were me, I have a lot of autonomy, which is
Right?
wonderful and terrible, right? If you have a district that approaches you and says, hey, we need math coaching.
Yeah.
I have one of those right now on my radar. What would you like? What would you
What
say
would we
would
do?
be?
Well, what
Yeah.
we do, so Jill, this is what Kyle and I do as well. So we partner with school districts to help
Mhm.
them with their professional development goals. And so when we get approached to say, hey, we need, some support, we use our 4-stage process. So our 4-stage process is first designing and measuring what we want to see in the classrooms.
Mm,
So if you think about it, if you're going to replicate that same 4-stage process, you're saying, what are the most important things you want to see? What are the outcomes? We go through in the webinar I'll send you is we kind of unpack the 4-stage process, but it'll give you a
okay.
workbook if you want to kind of go through.
Okay.
That helps, and district leaders use our workbook all the time to kind of figure out what is the most important thing that they should focus on. And so once we call these our big objectives. So once you help a district realize what are the big objectives that help achieve the vision of mathematics you want. That's that alignment. It's part of the alignment stages. We have to know where we're going. We have to look at the completed puzzle. What does the completed puzzle look like? Where are we aiming for? And where is everyone aiming for? Because we want those administrators on board, we want those teachers on board. Then we're going to start to go, what are some of our key actions? What are some of the measurables that we can take care of? How can we prove that what we're going to do this year is going to make a difference with what we want to see improvement on? Too often districts will say, well, we're gonna go in and we're gonna do this, this, and this, but we're gonna wait for student data to prove that we did it right. And when you wait for student data, there's a million factors that go into that student data.
Right.
But if
Yeah.
I say I want to see improvement in your lesson structure on engaging productive struggle with students, why don't we measure that? Why don't we measure what it looks like in our classrooms now versus later on a regular basis to see if we're actually engaging our students in productive struggle? And then we can say we made a dent there. Like we've got more teachers more often engaging our
Mm,
students in productive struggle because we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this year, and we remeasured at the end of the year and we have improvement in the area that we were setting up to do.
yeah.
So that's an important part of that process. So when a district says, which we need coaching, what should we do? We got to take time and go, well, what do you want to see happen? And let's create a plan. Here's your plan to make sure you get what you want to see happen. And
Mhm.
then then it's about carrying that plan out. So
Mhm.
So that's, stage one of our 4-stage process is designing those goals, figuring out how to measure those goals. Stage
Yeah.
two is figuring out how to unpack and unfold those goals. Like, how do I make sure I get in the classrooms? Is it a coaching role? Is it, am I doing, how many touch points of teachers did I do this year? Did I get into all the classrooms I needed to get into? Did I email them this many times that kind of breadcrumb them along? Did I do, how many sessions did I do that meet, what I need to do? How many times did I touch the administrators to make sure they're still aligned?
Yeah.
What support can I give when I only have this many avenues? If I've got an email avenue, I've got actual face-to-face meeting avenues. I've also got one to many group avenues. How do I plan out, all of the touch points that I have so that by the end of the year, I if I did all these touch points, I'm gonna hit those key results that we set.
Mm.
And when we do that, that's kind of, we call that our stage two, is optimizing and sustaining, like planning it all out, getting those on paper. Because what happens is we get into classrooms and teachers are going to say, like, I just did this and I need help with this. And then we're like, okay, I want to help you. I want to help you
Yeah.
do that, because you want every interaction you make with a teacher to feel like you're taking something off their plate, right? Like, how do I take something off
Right.
your plate and not put something on your plate? But,
Yeah.
but what you want to do is, because you have this mapped out focus,
Mm-hmm.
you get to go, how do I take that off their plate, but also still move us towards the vision that we set and the goals we set? How can I stay aligned every day? Because you're going to be, it's like all of a sudden you're going to be throwing spaghetti all over the place. You're not
Yeah.
going to be sure what you're doing because you're just trying to plug holes. You got to go through, like,
Mhm.
that's that optimize sustain part, is mapping it out and going, this is the way it's going to unfold, and I will stay aligned on what matters if I stick to this plan, because it will get messy later on. And then,
Yeah. The school year's
our
so
third
crazy.
stage, our third stage is all about building capacity, which is making sure you build in that time to play with the math.
I could see that.
The
Yeah.
fourth stage is about inspiring, teachers to become lifelong learners. And how do you
Mm.
do that? But it's the coaching moves. It's what you said, building relationships, making sure that
Mm-hmm.
every time you have a touch point with a teacher, that you're ensuring that they see every interaction that you have is something that's, always helping them instead of adding to their plates.
Yeah.
Because if they walk in the door, the last thing they're going to want is like, oh my gosh, here comes Jill again. She's going to give me something new to do. She's going to be something
Right.
to try. And part of that is because you mapped out and back in stage one and stage two, all the focus, that every time you walk in the door, it's always the same stuff that you're pushing. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, she's still pushing this. That must be
Matter.
really important. That must be really important. I better,
Mm-hmm.
I better like get on board. I better start like trying that, because what happens is when you come in and go, let's try this and let's try this,
Mm-hmm.
what it tells them is the last thing you just said wasn't that important,
Doesn't really matter.
because you're next time you come into my room, you're going to give me something new, and I'm going to have to try that. And so, because of that consistency, because of that focus you set back in stage one, if every touch point you had in that full year was always about the same three things,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to be like, all right, I'll make some growth there. I'll make some growth.
I
So
like that.
getting
That's
aligned
good.
and kind of staying focused, you can get pretty narrowed down. Every teacher can have their own focus, right? And every teacher
Sure.
depends on how many touch points with teachers you have on a regular basis. Like, we work with districts all across North America, and we're meeting with people all day long about how to strengthen this. So, we're helping them create touch points. We're creating touch points with school districts so they can create touch points with their teachers. Um, it's kind of like, depends on how many touch points you have and who your touch points are, on how granular you get at that level.
Yeah, I could see that.
All right,
Yeah.
what do you think? I did a lot of talking there.
It's good. No, that's good. And I think I'm just thinking about this district that I mentioned where they really have trouble imagining what it would look like to have students do the thinking. And I think I can totally see myself doing that. Well, maybe you should try to debate math, and maybe you should try a 3-act task, and maybe you should try, mathematical language, like just kind of, like you said, all over the place, waiting for something to like grab them. But I think instead I like the idea of focusing on, okay, instructional routines, which is what we've been talking about all year. But maybe we need to just say, okay, each teacher pick one instructional routine that you really want to try
And then write it
consistently.
down. And then so that you remember which one it is.
Yeah, and then I have to write down like this teacher, this routine,
But then
and
I would
this
say why? Like, why are you picking that one? Because what you
ah,
want is I want something that will help me make my job easier.
yes.
So how do I make my job easier? And what you just, you ask them is like, what are what are the pebbles that are currently happening, or rattling around in your shoe? Like, how can let's pluck one out of there today.
Yeah, that's a good
What,
one.
what's the pebble we can pluck today? And let's make sure that that pebble we pluck every time we come back, and if it's and then you're saying like, if they say, I just wish my kids were better, had better math facts, then it's like, perfect. Do
That's
you
great.
agree that we should focus on how to build fluency with our students in mathematics? All right. Every time I come in here, all we're going to do is help them be better math fact students. And every time I come here, I'm going to help you with a instructional routine that strengthens number sense, numeracy, and operations. And that's it. That's all we're going to do, because you think math facts are the most important thing. You wish that was strengthened with all your kids, and we're going to make it happen. All your kids will be better at math facts if we go through these, this PD that we're going to unpack this year on
Mhm.
this one pebble you have in your shoe. We're going to focus all on that.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's good. Like, because going back to the idea of if the teachers feel like you're there to take something off their plate or to make something easier for them or more manageable for them, then you have that buy-in and they're actually going to do it, right? If they feel like it's making their life easier, better.
Totally.
Because so often they just have these big, like, the one I hear all the time is student engagement. And well, what do you mean by student engagement? They really want them to write down the notes. I'm like, is that really what you want? Or
Right.
but so I like the idea of like, okay, getting a little, when you're with teachers, getting a little more granular, like, but not so granular that it's doesn't have an impact,
Right.
right?
Right. What would you say is your immediate next step?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna work on my agenda for the half-day PD that I have next week with that group of teachers, and I'm going to make one of the initial questions. What's the pebble in your shoe?
Awesome.
Let's see if we can find a few of those. And they're going to say student engagement, but then maybe we can talk about, okay, specifically, what would that look like for your kids in your classroom? Let's pick a routine that we know we can implement that will address that issue. And I'm there every day that week. So I'll be here the next day and the next day, and we're going to try it. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Thank John. Okay. I feel better.
Good. Good. What would you say is a big takeaway from today's chat?
Yeah, I think a big takeaway for me in my role is just thinking about the intention, right? So rather than just showing up and how is everything going today, like really paying attention to the number of touch points that we have and looking at how that directly supports the goals that the district has. I also just feel, like I said, I think we use the word validated, like affirmed that doing the math with teachers matters. So building the capacity and also addressing goals, desires for students.
Beauty.
Yeah, that's good.
Sounds like a great takeaway.
It's good stuff. Yeah. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Awesome. No worries. One last thing. Yeah, anything we can do to support you, let us know.
Okay. Thanks,
Fine.
John.
All right, Jill. Take care.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.